it's almost bizarre to think about the world before Uber.
Totally.
It's like, I mean, rental cars suck. It's like, I mean, how great is it just to,
Totally.
Uber, you don't have to park in the parking garage. You don't have to get validated by the valet. You don't have to return it at the airport.
Nope.
It's just, it's cheaper. It's faster. It's
Totally.
better, and that's that same idea. And we were talking about before the podcast, it's like, I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I have to have a car. I'll probably be one of the last 1,000 people with a car in the world. But if you were in New York City, I mean,
you want Uber.
Yeah.
But here on Hawaii Island, we actually technically have Uber, but you can't use it because there's no drivers.
Oh, so interesting.
The challenge here, I mean, this kind of makes it charming, but like I have to.
Oh, boo-hoo! I feel so bad for you.
I know.
Poor Kim living in Hawaii can't get an Uber. Back with the Steady Trade podcast. And, it's another one of those episodes. We've got an interesting topic. Kim and I think a lot alike, but we're always on that lookout for the next trade idea, the next trade concept, the next theme. If you listen to this podcast, you'll, especially in the past, Stephen and I talk about hot sectors. You hear that all the time. We tell you, especially if you're new or a part-time trader, we will beg you to just, to not trade unless there's a hot sector, unless there's a theme, because, if you've got a job, if you got a school, you got family, you got all these things going on, you can't trade every single day of the year. But there's certain times when you really need to focus. And the follow-up question we always get is, well, how do I spot the next hot sector? How do I know when there's a hot sector? So that is something that we're going to talk about today. And then we're also going to kind of focus on the sympathy play, as it's called. And we're continuing, the education of Kim as a trader. And, she had a trade idea and a concept. And I was like, hey, the stock we're going to talk about, the company we're going to talk about isn't public yet. But she came to me and said, well, hey, I'm very interested in this business model. Would it make sense to look for publicly traded companies that are in the same sector? And I'm like, 100%. You're looking at a hot sector and you're looking at sympathy play. So these are the concepts we're going to talk about today. So welcome back, Kim. Welcome back to the podcast yet again.
I'm excited for this topic because I'm very excited about this business model. And I was searching so hard, like it's always so easy to find a ticker. And I couldn't find a ticker for this company, and I was really getting annoyed. And then I was like, maybe they don't have one. And that
so
made me upset.
let's jump back. And this is what I love about this is this goes back to, again, when I talked about, if you go back to a couple weeks ago, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, we had the kickstart of Kim's penny stocking career. And I told her, I'm like, I want you looking for ideas. Don't watch the Kardashians. Okay.
I have never seen the Kardashians.
Lies.
Not one episode.
I hacked into your DVR box and it's nothing but Kardashian episodes.
And every
one of them's been watched like 50 times. You just keep watching the same ones over and over.
It's so not true. Don't start these harmful rumors.
So let's jump back. So give a little background. What is this company? How did you find it? What was
Joymode? Joymode is the company. I saw somebody put it on Twitter. I think Paul Graham, or maybe actually it was somebody else, I think, who talked about it. And they were speaking to the concept that they were shocked that Walmart brought them into their chain, and that he to him said something kind of serious about taking them much more seriously, Joymode. And they're basically a rental company, so they will rent TVs, they'll rent any kind of electronic equipment, or let's say lawnmowers, what have you. And I have been a huge fan of this concept of minimalism. There's a movie called The Minimalists about these two guys who are living with like, one coat. They have like, two sets of towels, two sets of sheets. That's it. Everything in their life has been minimalized. And then I'm also a big fan of Maria Kondo, who talks about, if what you have in your home doesn't spark joy, you should get rid of it. And the tiny house syndrome. So I think people are moving away from materialism and realizing how do they live kind of simply. And this concept of renting equipment as opposed to buying.
So this isn't like and I didn't have time to kind of look into it, but so this isn't the traditional like rent to own. This is more like I need a drill for a weekend
Correct.
project. I can go rent a drill from
Correct.
Walmart, not have to go to the tool. I've rented plenty of tools in the past. If you need some big expensive tool, like if you need to bust up some concrete, you don't buy a $5,000 jackhammer. You go to the rental store and you rent it for $100 a day.
But these are things that aren't. They're not even jackhammers. They're like I'm on the site now. They have like a kid's ball pit. They have like a pasta maker. They have my New York accent.
I was just gonna say you just reverted. You teleported from Hawaii to Boston there for a second. My pasta maker.
I totally did. I know what happened to my accent. Oh my God. Okay, what else do they have? They have things where you can get like a Theragun after a marathon, or a Nintendo, or a Vitamix for 2 weeks. Like they're not just big expensive things. They can be, a martini kit, a portable fire kit, luggage. That's
what I was getting at. That's what's interesting about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I was just drawing the analogy because, I'm a weekend handyman. So, heck, I've rented an excavator. I've rented $100,000 excavator before. Yeah. It's $250 for the day. You're never going to buy this $100,000 excavator, but this is the same idea. But again, if you've got a tiny house, or even if you just don't want more shit, man, it's like it's Christmas, and I'm not like hardcore minimalist. Trust me, I got a lot of crap. But it's like when people ask, "What do you want for Christmas?" I'm like, man, I just don't need anything else, man. Yes, like you, Kim gave me some coffee. Buy me some coffee or something. At least I'll use the coffee up, and it won't be sitting on my shelf or in my closet or something.
But don't send him chocolate.
Yes, yeah. Everyone knows
that was my mistake.
So I'm actually, I'm very interested in this.
You think about how many people buy a pasta maker, for example, right? You buy the pasta maker, you use it once, it sits on your shelf for 17 years because you're never making that damn pasta again. That is the perfect rental item.
we have, I can see it in my brain. We had a family Christmas party this weekend. So we got out, the wife made a great ham, but she got out the big roaster, okay? That, the big roaster that you put the ham in. Mm-hmm. We use that thing once a year. That's it. And it's this big. And it sits in the closet. And the other thing I remember, when I got that roaster out, I saw this triple fondue pot thing that someone gave us 15 years ago, and the box has never been opened. We've never used this thing. And
you gotta use this shit just to give it life.
Well, I should sell it, but the point is,
I'm not buying it.
There you go. I'll ship it to you.
I like chocolate.
But even the roaster, obviously, well, maybe the listeners don't, maybe they know, maybe they don't. I've got a good size house. It's not like I'm in some 900 square foot tiny house.
Correct.
I got room for the roaster, but my point is, if you were in a New York City.
If you were in a New York City apartment, you would not have room because there's no closets.
It would take your entire closet space.
Exactly. So that would be like you'd need another apartment just for your roasting. But these Vitamixes, I can't see there. Every time there's a thrift store here in Hawaii on this island, every time you go, there's Vitamix juicers all the time because, again, people start it strong and then they get bored with it. But so think about the concept of renting a roasting pan or a fondue pot or juice mix, Vitamix. Those are $600.
Oh yeah, yep.
Really good ones.
I've got again. It's so embarrassing. I've got one of those.
You're a hoarder.
I've got one probably. I've got one of those Breville juicers. That thing was like $500, and I haven't touched it in 6. I gave up. I got tricked into thinking juicing was a good idea. Anyway, I should make a point. We should have like a link below to Tim's secondhand store.
Oh my God. Or call Joymode and see if they want to take it from you and then start renting it out. It's been barely used, softly used equipment. But I got very excited about this company and I was like very frustrated that I couldn't find the ticker.
Yep.
And so right before we recorded this, I was asking Tim about that and really had never heard of the Sympathy play. So I'm very curious how, if they're not publicly traded, do I wait till they are? Do I look for somebody else who's doing this? What if I like them the most?
Well, that's a great question. So yeah, the two things you can do is start doing a little bit of research. You can do it with StocksToTrade. You can do it with Google Finance, Yahoo Finance too. Or even just Google searches and see if they're planning on going public. Now, in this day and age, everybody's going public right now. It's a very hot IPO market. So if they have intentions of going public, you should be able to find some sort of news. Now, if there's no mention of that, that's when you would start looking for that Sympathy play we talk about. So start Googling, obviously that's the beauty of the world we live in.
Yeah.
Google publicly traded rental companies. Now you're probably going to find a bunch of heavy equipment rental or car rentals, but all your, again, obviously I'm biased to StocksToTrade, but we have all of that information in the platform and you can see a description of their business.
Yeah.
You can read about it. We have a link right to their webpage and you can see. So then that's where you start building your watch list. So you create a rental ideas watch list. You start dropping tickers in there.
Okay.
Then you start, and then this is the cool thing. And this is what we'll be teaching Kim over the next few months and years, however long it takes. Next step is now we start running scans against those watch lists to see when the volume comes in and when the news comes in, because especially we're short-term traders. That's what we're teaching you. We're not looking to I joke all the time, what we do as day traders, as short-term traders, we don't, we're not Warren Buffett. We're not going to buy this company and hope to make money off it 40 years from now. That's not what, now, nothing wrong with that, but that's not what we're looking to do here. You can do that with your IRA or your 401k, let your manager think about 40 years from now. What we're trying to do is to profit off the short term. So that's what we would do. And then the great thing about StocksToTrade is we can set alerts for when the volume comes in and when there's news. And then you get that ping on your desktop and you're like, hey, my Sympathy play is warming up here. Yeah. And that's when you look to trade it. So
it's funny. Most of the ideas that I've had have all been short, like the companies or the matter, everything I've listed as my ideas have all been short. This is the first one that I feel is going to do well.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's, and the simple thing is, so it got on your radar because Paul Graham talked about him being in Walmart, right?
Yeah. Okay. It wasn't Paul Graham, but someone else on Twitter put it out there. Yeah. And said, look, Paul Graham gets credit for a lot of things. I love the guy, but for I want to give credit to the right guy, but I can't find him on Twitter. But he was a tech guy, one of the top tech guys, and he just said, holy mackerel, Walmart has taken this in.
And that's where, the best example of a Sympathy play I always like to use is 2015 and marijuana stocks, because think about what happened there. Only Colorado and Washington legalized. 2 states, you know, 2
Wow.
states out of 50. But that is the kind of news that everybody's like, oh crap, everyone else is going to get in.
Yeah.
So we saw thousands of % runs in wheat stocks.
Wow.
This Walmart news is very similar because, I mean, obviously he doesn't get much bigger than Walmart.
No.
So now people are going to be like, whoa, Walmart's interested in this. Other company, you know, Amazon's going to be in, you know, Home Depot, you know, all these other companies, you know, who knows, you know, Sears, Macy's, you know, there's all these potentials for this.
Totally. So, you know what you just reminded me of is the concept of renting clothes.
Yep.
So very early on, I was actually at a conference talking where the woman who started Rent the Runway was speaking. And I listened to her model and I was like, this is fantastic because these are, you know, super expensive dresses, $2,000 dresses. You rent them for $50 or $100 for a weekend. And that, you know, now that I'm looking with this lens of investing and or where to short, I can remember thinking, I think that's going to blow up. And it did blow up. And now who's starting to do this? Amazon. Yep. There's a whole bunch of like little mom and pops out there that are doing rental clothing where you get new clothing and then you ship it back. But now Amazon has on their Prime platform where you can get the clothing, try it on before you even get charged for it to make sure it fits, to make sure you like it. Maybe they're not doing quite yet rental clothing, but they're doing something similar. Make sure you like the wardrobe.
Well, and again, you know, you think about the theme, the overarching thesis of this trade idea. I mean, Uber and Airbnb. I mean, you talk about that. I mean, it's like think about it's almost weird, you know, like you travel a fair amount. I mean, I travel almost once a month. It's almost bizarre to think about the world before Uber, you know. Totally. It's like, I mean, rental cars suck, you know. It's like, I mean, how great is it just to, you know, totally. Uber, you don't have to park in the parking garage. You don't have to get validated by the valet. You don't have to return it at the airport.
Nope.
You know, it's just, it's cheaper, it's faster, it's better, you know, and that's that same idea. And we were talking about before the podcast, you know, it's like, I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I have to have a car. I'll probably be one of the last 1,000 people with a car in the world, but if you were in New York City, I mean, you
want Uber.
Yeah.
But here on Hawaii Island, you know, we actually technically have Uber, but you can't use it because there's no drivers.
Oh, so interesting.
The challenge here, I mean, this kind of makes it charming, but like I have to.
Oh, boo-hoo! I feel so bad for you.
I know.
Oh, poor Kim living in Hawaii can't get an Uber.
Poor girl. That means I can't go to the resort and have a little too much to drink and then take an Uber home. So I have to make a deal with a friend that we'll split up. That, you know, okay, tonight's your night. Not that I do this often because I'm such a lightweight. I can't really drink that much. But the point is, it's still kind of disappointing. So every time somebody comes to visit me, I have to pick them up at the airport.
Okay.
Because there is no Uber. But I think the concept of Uber, and that's part of why I think it's so interesting, the kind of all the bad stuff that's come out about them.
I mean, you know, it's like
they still are monsters, but it's amazing when you grow that fast and have that much success. I think it's hard to harness everything being perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, obviously, you know, what we're talking about, if you don't follow the business news, which remember, that's the number one thing you're supposed to be doing. But, you know, Uber's gotten in some trouble, you know, with some drivers doing some sketchy stuff. But, you know, it's like, I kind of also look at it like, I mean, that could be a public bus driver. You know, it could have been a public bus driver that did something. It could have been a New
York City cab driver.
New York City cab driver. I mean, again, it's like, I mean, it's kind of, you know, back. We recently recorded an episode on outrage culture. I mean, listen, if something bad happens to you in an Uber, I'm not making light of it, but at the same time, you also can't nerf the world, as they say. I mean, it's like bad things happen every day, and it's not like Uber wants bad things to happen.
Did you say nerf the world?
Yeah, you're not familiar with that term?
I've never heard that before. That's a brilliant phrase. I love that.
That's one of the, you know, are you familiar with the manosphere? So that's, you know, like male culture. Okay. You know, all those toxic males out there like me, you know? So, but you know, when you talk about nerfing the world, it's like when you see some guy with like his kid, like at the park and he's got like a helmet on, you know, it's like, man, it's like, listen, I don't want your kid to bust his head open, but falling off the monkey bars is part of life. You don't put a freaking helmet on the kid. So anyway, so that's when you say,
I like it. Nerf the world.
Nerf the world. Everything is like padded, you know. So
I get it. I remember I had a Nerf ball. I remember the Nerf balls. Oh God. All right. So I would look for another company similar to Joymode's business model, put in some parameters, and then be pinged when somebody similar shows up. Or would it also allow me to, I presume I would look for who are the people that are going to try to imitate Joymode and go public and not do a good job and kind of do the cheap man's version of that and then short them.
Very, very well said, especially if it's, I mean, you know, WeWork never managed to go public because they screwed it up so bad. But think of what WeWork was this close to going public. I mean, think about if they had managed, what a amazing potential short that could have been, you know.
Totally.
But actually, I mean, it got kiboshed before they could even go public. So yes, you're thinking the same way. You know, do your due diligence and look at these companies. If it's some sketchy, you know, penny stock, you know, with some guy with a shady history and stuff like that, you could definitely look to potentially short them if they do.
Is there a sympathy play you've done recently, or one that you loved in the past that you were like, wow, this was such a winner for me?
You know, the nice thing is recently we've got a lot of these cancer and liver plays. So liver disease, for whatever reason, is a very hot trend lately. And that's the nice thing is you'll see these $60, $70 stocks with a press release. And then the nice thing is you can start looking at these penny stocks that are in the same sector. And we've had a few of those that have ran. The LVS is a small oncology, you know, small cancer play. That stock was like the hottest stock in November. It went from 2 to 18 in November. So, and their news was kind of suspect, but they had a very similar remedy to a higher priced cancer stock that was moving. So yeah, it happens all the time. And CLVS was great. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Cool.
So back to kind of a couple other things I wanted to talk about on this is, you know, what I like about your idea, you know, we touched on Airbnb, you know, we touched on, you know, home ownership even. I mean, I tell you, I obviously I've got a family. I mean, I'm not going to move around, but if I was young, I mean, think about the potential. I mean, you could just live anywhere. I mean, well, our friend Tim Sykes does that. You know, he has no house. He just lives in the world and Airbnbs it everywhere. Yeah. And I was recently at a conference with Grant Cardone, and you know, this guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He doesn't even own his own house. Every piece he's in real estate. He looks at real estate is like, if it's not generating income, I don't want it. And he's like, if I buy a house, it's just a money pit, repairs, you know, it's property taxes. I mean, it always cracks me. That's the older I get, the angrier I get about property taxes.
Don't let that happen. Don't become an angry old man.
I'm kidding, but I mean, it's like, and I've talked about it on the podcast many times, but it's like, if you want to know who really owns your property, don't pay your property taxes. You know, you'll find out who you might have paid cash. You might have paid cash for your property, but if you want to know who really owns it, don't pay your property taxes for a couple of years. You'll find out. You know,
they'll be at the door in no time.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's back to your trade idea, and that's what I like about it so much. Yeah. And to be honest, I'm going to be running these scans. I'm going to be looking for this because
totally. And I think that perhaps is something that's going to develop down the road. Not just the concept of tiny homes, but the concept of renting over buying. Yes. And I still think that's still somewhat almost taboo to speak about because everything has been kind of jammed down our throats our whole life about owning a home. And we both just spoke before we started recording about James Altucher and how he is such an advocate and has been for probably 10 years plus of not owning your own home.
Actually, one of my
downplays college too.
Actually, one of my favorite books is his. I spoke at my old high school for graduation back in the spring. Wow. They asked me to come speak to the Honor Society.
That's so cool.
And I gave 3 book recommendations, and Choose Yourself by James Altucher was
Choose Yourself.
Yep. I tell you that. I mean, it's just, I think it came out 2010, 2011.
I think, maybe even a little bit after that. I should check because I bought that book right before I came to Hawaii to write my book. And I read it on the plane landing in Hawaii, which I was going to house it. By the way, I housed that for 1.5 years so I could afford to write my book.
Nice.
So that when I read that book coming into Hawaii, it just gave me this like boost of confidence.
2013.
And I wrote him an email thanking him for it.
So, and yeah, I mean, I tell you, we do a lot of book recommendations here. Especially if you're, I mean, like I read it in 2013 and it wasn't soon after I sold my business because I had, a lot because of Choose Yourself and actually was lucky enough to meet James roughly that same period.
What was he like in person?
It was just it was at a conference and it was a dinner with like 12 people. Yeah. I chatted across the table for like 1.5 minutes, but really nice guy. So cool. We talked about, I went into how, I'm famous for, well, not famous, but I've talked about it on the podcast. I made the classic entrepreneurial mistake in that all I did with my business was create a 24/7, 365 job for myself. Okay. So I was, anyway, read about that if you've got a business, don't make that mistake.
Exactly. Don't make that kind of business.
Exactly. And so I was on the fence about selling and I explained this to James. He's like, you need to sell now. He's like,
wow.
We were at a stock trading conference. He's like, I see the passion you have for trading. You're all fired up about this. You're about this business. He's like, go, get out. And I did. Thanks to James. So yeah.
Shout out to James Altucher.
And that's your homework. You got to get James on the podcast.
I will. I'll get him on. I think he'd do it. I do because he comes out of finance and he's all about thinking for yourself. And I think everything that Steady Trades podcast is about is encouraging people to think for themselves and look for things that the masses aren't doing. So, or understand what the masses are doing and then make your own choice accordingly.
Exactly. Yeah.
To follow that or not. But his book Choose Yourself for 1 million reasons, I think and his advocacy too of not spending a lot of money on college. And I'm not just going to, demonize college, but the point is there is a serious amount of debt a lot of kids get into. And he's kind of an advocate for, spend that money reading, getting mentors, traveling the world, getting experiences, volunteering, what have you. And, or, I don't know how much he gets into understanding the trades or building yourself a trade, but that there's very few tradesmen in the world.
Well, and that's, and we've talked about that. I mean, my son is going to go to trade school and I'm pumped. Yeah. I'm super excited. He's planning on going to electrical lineman school. And I look at the electrical infrastructure in the country, in the world. I couldn't be more happy that he's going into that trade because now he's going to have a skilled trade. He loves being outside. I mean, I talk about his hunting and fishing all the time. I mean, it's a high-paying job, and it's going to be in demand. I mean, he's going to have a job the rest of his life.
It's already in demand. I mean, I just remember being in New York City, and, the previous people that I worked for, they had constant issues with their HVAC. Yeah. And for me to get one worker to that house would take sometimes 6 weeks.
Jeez.
This was, a billionaire who could, whatever you need, like I would offer them the world to get them. And they're like, sorry, we're so booked. We don't have enough guys. Like, it was like that. So there's something about the tradesman that I think is the best kept secret going into that.
Totally agree. And, you know, and my thing is, and I'm not, you know, I agree a lot with James, you know, about college. Now, I mean, I always say, listen, if you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, go to college. But I mean, if you're going to be, you know, a liberal arts major or a poli-sci major, you know, or any of these soft sciences or whatever they call them, man, just go to the internet. You know, it's like
just go read 1,000 books and you'll be good.
Exactly. You know,
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's or trade school. I mean, if you're interested in being an electrician or a plumber, which, man, I tell you, I talk about this.
Millionaires. They're going to be the millionaires of the future.
I mean, you know, just like you said in New York, I mean, I'm in a very rural area, and I mean, I have a lot of friends that are contractors, and I've got a buddy that's he's a concrete contractor. He's got a small business, does a lot of, you know, driveways, sidewalks, foundation walls and stuff. I was talking to him the other day. If his phone rings and it's not in his address, but he won't even answer because he's so sick. He just doesn't like to tell people no anymore. Yeah. And he's like, if I don't know the number, it's probably someone that got my number somewhere, a referral or whatever. He's like, I'm so
can't take any more work on.
Yeah.
That's wild. So that's a good problem to have.
Exactly. And that's what he said. Yeah.
That's a good problem. That's successful business, or is he a publicly traded company? No. See, I'm looking. My eyes are open, Tim.
That's what I like. So let's actually kind of bring this home here. So what I want you to do for homework, you and the listener, is, and I'm going to work on this together. So go to joymode.com.
Yep.
Excuse me if you're listening, and check that out. And what I would like you to do is, you know, in the comments, if you could find, there might be some out there. Find a similar company that's a publicly traded ticker. Now, maybe none exist. Maybe Joymode is that far ahead of the curve.
Right.
If there is a company in this niche, you know, just like, you know, Uber was first, but then Lyft came along and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with your trade idea, and I would love to build a watch list together with the listeners and, you know, and you.
Cool. That's awesome. And, you know, as soon as I saw Joymode and that shout out on the concept of them being a Walmart, I did instinctively go to this LinkedIn profile of the CEO and the CFO. And I was like, okay, who are these people? Where did they come from? What's their experience? Where are they are they kind of conscious capitalists, which are the kind of companies that I like to support? You know, I started to kind of look at all that. How deeply do you look at that when you're considering?
Well, not much for what I do, because again, a lot of what I do is very short term. Okay. So now, back when I was aggressively a short seller, because I started out 90% short bias back in 2007, 2008. Okay. We all remember 2007, 2008. Everything was crashing. You know, Bear Stearns went out of business. Lehman went out. All the banks would spike and fade, you know, so much to the downside. And then I was primarily short biased for 6 or 7 years. And back then, I did that kind of stuff all the time because, especially in penny stock land, I mean, you'll find a lot of sketchy characters, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying if you commit a crime, you can't reform, but there's a lot of guys with criminal past and bankruptcies. And, you know, I think everyone should have a chance to redeem themselves. But in penny stock land, if you see a guy that's got a criminal record and, you know, and
multiple bankruptcies
and bankruptcies, and all of a sudden,
just make him president instead.
Well, but now all of a sudden he's the CEO. Well, yeah, there you go. Now he's the CEO of a $2 penny stock company. You might be like,
maybe not so.
And even if you don't short it, maybe you're like, I don't want to buy this either because I think it's going to crash. So there's usefulness there.
Okay. But don't get caught up in the minutia of too much of that because we're coming in for a short period of time and we're coming out.
Yeah, most of what we do, and good question, is, you know, we're mostly capitalizing on hype, okay?
Yeah.
Just like, I go back because it was one of the biggest runs, but, to 2015 in Colorado and Washington. I mean, two small states. I mean, it's not like it was California, New York, or whatever. Two small states, and hundreds of stocks ran thousands of percent. Now, they all crashed.
Yeah.
But it was a short-term trend that we could capitalize on.
Yeah. So capitalize on hype. I just heard you say that. I'm going to put that on a Post-it.
Perfect.
Because that is what happened with Peloton, right?
Yes.
That's when we talked about that the other day. So what I'm hearing you say is that this is, and maybe this is just a fundamental mindset of what you're an advocate of, because possibly, I'm guessing, but I'm thinking I could see people, certainly myself, coming into trading thinking not like that, not realizing that they're capitalizing on hype. I mean, to play the capitalizing on hype is a very different game than finding a company, let's say like Joymode, who looks really responsible and smart and blah, blah, blah. Like, they're not hype.
Yep.
So that would not be kind of who I'd want to bring up to the playground. I want to find the people who are hyping and pretending to be like Joymode.
Exactly.
And that is what I'm wanting to try to find.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. We here's another one for a Post-it for you. In short-term trading, we use the term that we're just trading the ticker. Okay.
Yep.
What that concept means is we don't care next month, next year, whatever. What we care about is today. There's a press release that says they're going to cure cancer, and this stock is trading 100 times its normal volume, spiking 100%. And we know, because of animal spirits, John Maynard Keynes, we know that people, gonna
get excited.
Go back to the tulip mania. Okay.
Yeah. They're going to buy the hype. They're going to
buy the hype. And what we're doing on the Steady Trade podcast is we're saying, recognize that and look to profit from it. We're not bag holders. We're not holding this sketchy stock for 6 months because we think it's the next Google.
Right.
What we're looking to do is to profit in the short term off the people that think it's going to be the next Google. And you know what? There's only one Google. There's only been one Apple. There's only been one Amazon. In the
probably only one Joymode.
So, exactly.
Yeah, I hear you.
In the thousands and thousands and thousands of publicly traded companies, there's only been one Google. So what are the odds you're going to be in the next Google?
Totally.
Puny percent. But if you go in thinking that, you can day trade those, have a plan, have a stop loss if the trade doesn't work, but you're just looking to grab that move and then move on to the next one. Yep. Okay. So
cool. This is awesome. I feel like capitalize on hype is my takeaway phrase from today.
Perfect. All right. So as always, remember, if you're listening on iTunes, thank you very much. Drop us a comment and a rating on iTunes. We would really appreciate that. And, if you're on YouTube as well, we'll link to steadytrade.com below. But, we throw out a lot of books. We throw out Twitter handles. We'll talk about articles and stuff like that. So the cool thing is, if you go to steadytrade.com, everything's linked. So again, I joke about it. If you're driving, listen to this. You don't have to write these things down. We've got a great team that goes through and pulls all these links and puts them on steadytrade.com. So as always, we'd like to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.